We've got a great guest for you guys today, Russ Seymour. Russ is the Leesburg Economic Development Director. Russ, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure, JC. Thank you.
This is a little bit different, Russ, because you and I are actually neighbors. And
You're not supposed to tell anybody.
You're right down the street from me. I could probably hit a sandwich and hit your house, probably. Not that I would.
I could only do it if I was aiming in the opposite direction.
There you go. Right. So we're on a Zoom call, so we apologize for the quality. But first of all, thanks for joining me, Russ. Lots going on. Obviously, small businesses in Leesburg and Loudoun County. First, I'm kind of curious. I'd like to get to know you a little bit more. I think I have a good background of where you came from and so forth. But for the sake of our audience, tell us a little bit how you ended up here in Loudoun County, specifically in the job of economic development.
Sure. I had started out back right before 1996 and was a long-range planner for Stafford County and enjoyed it. One of the best things that came out of Stafford County that's where I met my future wife. So that was certainly worthwhile being up there, but enjoyed the area. Always, though, my background was in economic development, and so I wanted to really get back into that. The planning helped tremendously, but economic development back in the mid-90s was going through a lot of changes. The state was changing their program. They were transitioning from a department to what is now the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, which is a public-private entity, so there was a lot going on. There was also starting to be the creation of what are now regional economic development organizations. Mm-hmm. And it gave me an opportunity then to basically go across the street and start working for the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance, which was the regional economic development partnership that was for the city of Fredericksburg, Stafford, Spotsylvania, Caroline, and King George counties. So it kind of pulled that mid-Fredericksburg area together. And I was the vice president there for about 6 years. And there was an opportunity for me to go back home. I'm from the Williamsburg area. And that's where I grew up, born and raised. Mm-hmm. So went back there for a couple years. And, I always tell it, I don't want to say I made a mistake, but I came up here to Leesburg just for a drive one day, really just fell in love with this area. And the fact that we have family up here, my wife was very convincing as well. And so we really, really enjoyed being up here and fell in love with it. And the opportunity came about. So look forward to being up here. And I guess I've been up here now about 2.5 years.
2 years. Yeah. Is your wife from here?
She is, she'll tell you she's military. So she's from numerous places, mm-hmm. but from Stafford is where she went to high school.
Gotcha. Right. So, Russ, what was it like growing up in the Seymour family at the dinner table when you were a kid?
Well, very interesting. Being an only child, it was a lot of adults and me. Uh-huh. But very important, my family's from Pennsylvania. And so there's a lot of, I tease them about being mountain folk, but there's a lot of that home, family is very important. These are aspects that really I continue to work. I convey that now to our son, but those are things that have been very important. And they drive not only what we do personally, but also how we do our jobs. And that's a very big factor that I rely on a regular basis.
Sounds good. Let's jump into business then.
Okay.
Leesburg, you mentioned to me you've got a prototype coming out looking towards the future, post-COVID, virtual Leesburg. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, virtual Leesburg actually was started with the outbreak of the COVID virus, and it was really started first by a couple of the downtown businesses. There was an idea that was being tossed around saying that we're still open. We may not be open in the same format we have been, but we're still open, and we need to get that message out. What's the best way to do that? So we tossed around a number of ideas, and that's where Virtual Leesburg came out. It really gave them an opportunity. It started with an opportunity to provide meals to go, basically curbside service, and then sort of dovetailed from that to now there are several hundred businesses that are involved in it. It's expanded outside of just downtown Leesburg now, and it allows people to go look at what's there, do their shopping, whether they want to buy something, have it delivered, whether it's something that they want to have the curbside service brought out to. And at the end of the day, JC, it's just an opportunity for our businesses to continue to communicate that they're open, that they're moving forward. And I'm hoping the way that things are going, that this is a service that we'd like to keep up and operational now after we get past this.
Yeah, I'm all for it. What are some of the programs that Leesburg is doing right now to help small businesses specifically? You talked a little bit when we chatted the other day about delaying tax payments, and really what I like to talk to you about also, if you could add anything to what Loudon Economic Development is doing to help small business as well.
Well, and I'll start with Loudon, and then we'll kind of dovetail back into what Leesburg's doing.
Sure.
Most recently, Loudon has put out their COVID business, what they're calling their Business Interruption Fund. And there was a little over $1 million that was put aside by the supervisors and by their Economic Development Authority. And it is open for a small window. So we're telling people May 2nd, that window closes, and I believe it closes at noon on May 2nd. So what they're doing is you're putting in your application as a business, and then they will go through and select, I think it's, I'm not even exactly sure how they're going to go through it, but I do know it's a random selection process that they will do. And it highlights businesses that have 3 employees or more. Now, if you're a rural business in Loudoun County, there's also part of that fund that's tied to specifically earmarked for rural businesses. Now that does go down to 0 employees. So that expands it a little bit for a lot of the businesses that are tied to farming or do more of the rural community. That's been a big part of it. Facebook has also come out with a program that not too many people, I don't know how many people realize this, but Facebook put out a specific business grant program, and they included it as part of Loudoun County. They talked about the entire area, but we did verify that that is for all Loudoun County. So it's not just Ashburn. That was the big thing. They picked Ashburn, and no, it is for all. They say Ashburn and surrounding areas.
Right. I was really surprised at that, Russ. I don't know if you've been on that website, but I did apply personally.
Good.
I'm a huge Facebook user. Not because I enjoy being on it socially, but I use it for business, as you've seen, and it's a huge driver of my business. Great for marketing, in my opinion. But I scrolled down, and when I was doing that application, I scrolled down. I'm seeing all these big companies one after another, and there's Ashburn, Virginia, and I'm like, whoa, pretty incredible that they picked out specifically Ashburn, Virginia, and it's great to hear that it's all allowed. So I think small business in Loudon needs to put in their name in the hat for that grant for sure.
Absolutely. And then to kind of dovetail back a little bit too, obviously Virginia Tourism Commission has been putting a lot of information out there. We've been on, they do weekly web chats to kind of give us an update on a lot of what they're doing, because so much of our area has been tied to visitors coming in and out.
Yeah.
Our hotel industry, our retail industry, restaurants, all of that play a part in this. So Virginia Tourism Commission, the VTC, has put out a number of programs. I would encourage our listeners that are businesses to make sure they look into that, because there are a lot of programs that you may not consider yourself personally as a tourism-based business, but when you look at some of the programs there, that definition is fairly broad. So I would encourage the listeners to take a look at that as well. The Loudoun Chamber of Commerce has done a really good job too. They've put together resource guides. You know, JC, one of the things that I talk about, economic development is we compete. We compete against every other locality. We compete against every other regional group. When something like this happens, though, you're going to see a lot of hands coming across the aisles. And Obviously, we do a lot of work because we're here as part of Loudoun County, but we're doing a lot of work now, obviously, with Arlington and some of the surrounding areas. And it's really tossing out ideas. What are you doing? What are we doing? How to figure it out. And I use that sort of to tie back into what we're doing now in Leesburg. Part of my process, or part of my approach to economic development, has always been you need to focus a lot of your attention on existing businesses. Economic development, when it started, was always about marketing, bringing in the new ones. But in my book, you can't bring in a new one and lose 3 existing ones and call that a great deal. And what I've always told my staff and anybody that I've worked with over the years has been, every one of your existing businesses is a target for your competition. And you need to remember that. So when this first hit, we're very fortunate that we do a fairly broad outreach to our existing businesses. And so when the COVID-19 first hit, one of the first things we started to do was, I didn't want to be in a position to guess what was needed. So we started making phone calls, we started going emailing to the extent that we could cover as many of the businesses as we can in Leesburg, and that's still continuing. And one of the things that they had heard about, or that we had heard about, I should say, was as these businesses were applying for state funds, and there have been a number of them, the PPP funds, the different ones that are out there,
Yep.
They're great. The problem is, though, there's an application process, then there's a vetting process, then there's an award process, and this can take 60 to 90 days. Well, a lot of times small businesses are not going to survive 60 to 90 days. And that's been a big issue for us. So one of the things that they had told us was, find us a way that we can save some money over the next 60 to 90 days. How can the town help us do that? And so on the 14th of April, town council, and I give them a lot of credit, went in and they looked at 2 of the biggest areas for us, and that was meals tax and occupancy tax on one side, and then B-POL on the other. And what they did was they waived that, or not waived it, they postponed it for 90 days. So, and they did it for 2 quarters. So the first quarter, beginning in January of this year, all the way through the second quarter, so the first half of this year. And they did it going back to the first quarter, even though that wasn't under the COVID issue at that point. It gave them an opportunity, because as businesses, your taxes obviously are going to be more based on the more income or revenue you bring in. It was a better shot for them to help the businesses by giving them a higher monetary break by going back and looking at the first 3 months of this year, as well as the quarter that we're in right now. So the council did a lot of really good.
Yeah.
We worked with them. They thought about it, and I give them a lot of credit for doing that. So, and I give them a lot of credit to not only our council, but the Board of Supervisors for Loudoun. Every time we talk to them, the one thing that they keep talking about is, how can we help our business community? And that's been something that they see as obviously has a ripple effect to the entire locality.
Sure. Have you seen any signs of small businesses in Leesburg not being able to make it?
We have. Fortunately, it's not been on a broad scale. I don't know, based on when the state funding ran out, state and federal funding ran out the first time, I think there was a lot of concern being raised. Obviously, there was a lot of concern when you saw some of the names of the larger companies. I think the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah.
They, I'm sorry, I'm a Boston Celtics fan, so I'm going to tease the Lakers a little bit. But I think there was a lot of concern that was being raised by the local businesses then. They went back and they started looking at it. They've redone it. We're hearing more positive things now. But JC, the problem that we're running into is nobody is really certain where this is going to go. As we start to look at the future, there's a lot of areas, other states now that are starting to open up. And I think that's great for business. The downside, though, is if you start to see a resurgence in this, it's not just the businesses being open, but it really comes back to consumer confidence. And that's going to be a big driver in a lot of this. So It's not only working with the businesses, but at some point, consumers are going to have to become more confident and get back out into that market. The other piece that I will mention as well is when you're starting to see these reopenings, a lot of that, they're still having, I know restaurants spacing tables out. only allowing a certain number of people in. So I want everybody to understand that even if we were to open up tomorrow and all businesses were to open up, it's still not only consumer confidence, but capacities at our typical businesses are going to be greatly reduced for a time.
It's going to be totally different.
It is. It's going to take some time to come back out of this.
Yeah. I know you guys aren't really the ones organizing First Friday, but what are your thoughts about the Leesburg First Friday events coming back anytime this summer?
I can only hope. The concern, though, is going to be one of the things that made First Friday such a great venue and a great event was that it got people out, brought them together in a downtown area.
Right.
And until we can get past to where we're past the 6 feet and we're past the need to wear masks out all the time.
Right.
I don't know that we're going to get, even if we opened it up, I don't know how many people we would get back in that environment.
Right. It would be a little awkward, I think.
Yes.
Well, that's a shame. Russ, small businesses in Leesburg, what's the best resource that you can provide for them? How they can get in touch with you maybe, or somebody on your staff if they need some advice?
Absolutely, JC. They can certainly reach out to our Leesburg Economic Development Office. All of our information's on there. I always tell businesses that we work with, call us anytime. We work pretty much, cell phones keep us on business or on the clock pretty much 24/7. But there are a lot of resources that we've put on the economic development at leesburg.gov, leesburgva.gov. Okay. And so there's a lot of information on there, contact information, and a lot of links. And JC, there's something else I want to mention too that we sometimes forget when we're starting to look at businesses, but there are a lot of services out there that citizens really get accustomed to. And I think of even trash, recycling, mowing in our in town areas. These are things that the town is still moving forward on. So these are still being done. The town has had to get very creative in this situation and how to make this happen. But at least for the time being, and I haven't heard anything that's going to slow that down, the town is committed to keeping those services running. So that's something I wanted to mention as well to the listeners.
Well, my trash got picked up this morning, so yes. I'm happy.
Good.
Appreciate the work that the town's doing and the town council. You folks at Economic Development doing a great job. I had a chance to talk to Eric Bird, Small Business Development Center, Tony Howard, Chamber. A lot of people working hard to help small businesses survive, and hopefully we'll get to the other side of this and we'll be able to enjoy dinner downtown Leesburg and a cup of coffee or a glass of wine, whatever it may be. We're looking forward to that day.
Well, JC, we will. And one of the things that I'll just throw out there at the end, I think you're going to see when visitation, tourism, and travel start to come back, I think you're going to see a lot of one-day trips. What can you do within a day? That way you're not necessarily getting on an airplane or getting on a boat, but what can you do within a day? And I think Leesburg, obviously with Visit Loudon being the lead on that, but Leesburg's sitting in a very good position, and we're going to work awfully hard from a town government standpoint to make sure that people in our broader region know exactly where Leesburg is.
Love it. That's a great plan for the future, Russ. Hopefully I can help you.
Yes, very much.
Thanks for joining us, Russ. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, JC. Take care.
Take care.